Greetings, I'm with Apollo Sinkevicius of both One Mighty Roar and Robin Powered.
Yes.
You wear multiple hats. This isn't your first rodeo, but before we even get into your long background, first I want to congratulate you. I'm curious, of what are you more proud, beating Rocky or winning the gold medal in short track speed skating?
The last one, I think spelling was different.
Oh, okay.
I think it was single L.
Apollo Sinkevicius, of course, that's a Greek name.
Yeah, it's Lithuanian.
Well, I did not start the interview with Kaktyala Tovarish, but
I'm gonna get you a butt kick.
with size 16 feet. Anyway, Apollo has been at lots of startups. We don't even have to go through your history, but he's forgotten.
Look me up.
He's forgotten more than I've ever known. Let's create a company. You've got a couple $1 million that's just burning a hole in your pocket. You've found a co-founder, but you haven't done anything else. What are the 4 or 5 things you're going to need to do? Legal. You're going to need to do forgetting space. You're going to need to do payroll.
Right.
Let's walk through the infrastructure of setting up a company.
So I think the first and foremost, you're bringing up co-founders, and this is something that we did with Robin. It was quite a process because there's 4 of us. Was to talk through the logistics of what it is, to be a co-founder. It's like any other relationship. If you set your expectations early and discuss possible not so optimal scenarios in advance and agree on how it's going to be handled, when you know what hits the fan, sometimes it's easier to get out of that trouble, you having agreed to it. With the boys, what we agreed upon, things like, what if any of us get married? What if any of us get divorced? What if any of us get into coma? How do we...
I'm sorry, this is your personal, not that you fire a co-founder divorce. This means that they actually get divorced.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, when you get divorced, common property and so on. We went through quite some extensive details to get our operating agreement together. And of course our gentleman agreements, because there are certain things that the lawyers don't know how to form. We have agreed how we approach decisions, what are the thresholds where all 4 of us have to confer and agree, which we, in general, even now, we don't practice as threshold. We agree on, we practice information rights on all of us. We tell each other everything. There are no secrets between us. Everything is known to each other. And I think that was very important to establish, to start a relationship, because all that stuff that happens afterwards, a lot of times requires consensus. A lot of times you have to make decisions very quickly and you don't have time to confer. So,
well, it's easy when I think you need to determine what requires unanimity.
Right.
And if there's not unanimity, that's when these things really take effect. What's the power to decide?
I think that was one of the best things that we did as 4 of us as a team, is set these guidelines, because I know how Brian thinks, I know how Sam thinks, I know how Zach thinks, and there are certain things that I'm just not going to engage or start doing because I know that they will not agree to it. It cuts out a lot of BS arguments. It's unnecessary, and we got 20,000 things to do. Arguing is not one of them. So I think that's the most important part. You should not proceed without actually having that on paper. Handshakes are great, fantastic, but they don't work anymore. So get it on paper. In order to get that on paper, I think to get started, you can get started with, smaller law firm or a good, great individual, practitioner, attorney, corporate attorney. But the more I'm doing this startup game, the more I'm starting to realize it may be worthwhile to start with someone from the very beginning who knows the game and is a little bit larger, because especially when we're talking about taking an investment, it's not marriage. There is no divorce when you take the investment. It's until IPO or bankruptcy do us part. And you're gonna go play with sharks. You're going to play with big guns. You're not one. You're not some big experienced entrepreneur. Get someone on your side who has been in the game for a while to represent you. And finding a good law firm is like finding a good accountant. You have to be comfortable with your partner. Partners are different. Even within the same law firm, you can have some horrible partners and some really great ones.
Oh, I can't agree enough. It's the partner that counts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the associate. It's the worker.
I love our associates.
Yeah.
We have at Rose Williams, and my crew over there is fantastic. I mean, I get emails back if I email Ed, my partner there, at like 11:30 p.m. I'll get an email back within a minute.
Right. That is not the firm. That's not the firm responding. That's the individual that you're.
That's the individual responding. He knows that if I email him that late, it's important.
Well, I'm going to take a little counter viewpoint here. I think that incorporation is necessary as soon as you have something at risk.
That's true.
So, and if you're just by yourself, but you're working on intellectual property or whatever it may be, I think standard boilerplate incorporation, things like that, can be done. You don't need to, especially if it's your first time around, you don't have best attorneys. There are some standard agreements. You can find them on Quora. These are the best standards.
Right.
But when it gets into personnel issues, then you start.
If you're a single founder and if it's just you, yourself, and I,
right?
Yeah, who cares?
Now, how about you can have a firm, but if you have a employment law question, it may be a different person you want to work with than if it is a standard corporate matter or it's a litigation matter. What do you recommend in terms of keeping one firm versus going for the best available person?
Well, everyone has individual approach. What has worked for me is I like to take the approach of having my snipers to watch my back, and I prefer to pick the best of breed. My trademark and IP attorney is not from the same firm. Mm-hmm. Employment practices, the same thing. I like to, if I find someone you really good in that particular area, the ultra specialist, I hang on to them. These are my snipers. They go with me from company to company to company. They know the moment they get my email what exactly I'm going to say and what I expect from them. And that's actually where the efficiencies come from. The costs are high. Professional services, good professional services.
The price is high, but the cost is even higher if you screw it up.
Oh yeah, we have done some of those.
Okay, so once you've got your team of attorneys or other teams, there's everything from benefits to whatever. How do you suggest people search out? You can give your list of favorites, go ahead. But this is obviously a matter of getting a bunch of opinions, interviewing them. To me, one of the great ways of interviewing professionals is to see how far willing they are to bend over and be generally helpful and do whatever. It's the way to perform for you, and it's a good indicator.
I think it's the case with anyone who you want to employ as an employee in your company. I use the same standards for people that try to hire for our team as I use for our suppliers, vendors, specialists. How you treat me from the very beginning is how you're going to treat me when we're in the trenches fighting the battle. And I test you from the very beginning with, I'll get cranky on you and see how you respond to that. I'll be sweet with you and see how you respond to that. And I'll be my normal self and I see how you respond to that. And I paint a complete picture of who you are as an individual first, because I'm going to have to, when again, we're in the trenches, your personality matters. And that's what I pick.
Back again, let's let's name names. We don't have to name bad names. Who are the people that you work with that you like? You're mentioning law firms. Who do you like for HR? Who do you like for accounting? Who do you like for everything?
So HR is one thing that I've been very vocal about not outsourcing. These third-party providers, your people are your core competency. If you can't handle it, get somebody who will. Your co-founder, somebody has to be trained to deal with that. Finding the benefits, yes, you can get a broker. We have one in Western Mass. Michael Regan is my broker, and he
that's for health insurance. That's
health insurance, my general liability,
D&O,
cyber, D&O. He's amazing. A good broker is worth their weight in gold.
Okay, and his name again?
It's Michael McLean, and I think it's Rob McLean.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Banks.
I like him small. I'm sorry, SVB, but I just like my Cambridge Trust, and the reason I like my Cambridge Trust is when I call up Jane again, at any time of the day. She knows our finances, she knows where things are. And there are times when you're going to need line of credit. There are times when you're going to, when say, for example, when Robin was formed as a company, to creditors, it's a brand new business. It doesn't matter that when Mighty Roar before that was around for 4 years. It's a separate entity. It doesn't have any credit. You need someone in a small bank who knows you. They have experience with you. They will bend rules. They will find ways to get you what you need.
I'm going to go here with the counter example. This is one where I'm going mainline, and by mainline I'm not talking about JP Morgan.
Right.
I think I've written a bunch. Silicon Valley Bank,
Some
Pam
like
Allsworth,
them.
like that.
Some like them.
They're the best. And what they can do, which no Cambridge Trust can do, is they've got massive connections through every VC, everybody you want to meet. They can do it, and they also are the bankers for all the great wines of California. So their parties are a heck of a good time.
Yeah, they also want warrants from you and other stuff. But
No, there's all things. They will do debt financing and stuff like that. But that's one of them. Okay, next.
Yeah, I think the bottom line there is do your research, be comfortable with your banker.
Paying bills. That's something which you don't have to actually be writing checks, or you do that yourself.
There's certain things that I like to do it old school. Anything that requires notifying the board, anything that's over $10,000.
No, the little stuff.
The little stuff, Bill.com. We literally
not in Dinero, not any other one. Bill.
Look. I've tried everything out there. I mean, even for accounting, we tried Xero. I'm back to my QuickBooks. There are certain things in operations. It's been working for years. It works perfect. Your service providers know how to use it. Stop messing around.
Well, with people who are pros like Apollo, I couldn't agree with more. If you're not, I think you should not have to try to figure out how to do this. There are other people around, but we can get those things.
I have supporting strategies. To this day, I know how to do my own books. I know how to run books. After first startup, I got really, really, really in debt, and it quickly and I used to not do books, but now I will not get involved with anything where I cannot have 100% access to the books at all times. And it's very weird. In the previous startup, Fixability, I was introduced to a company called Supporting Strategies. They're basically outsourced bookkeepers. Well, the beautiful thing is, one, they're local. Two is, you get people assigned to you. So they are kind of like your staff. And they're very accessible, and I have been big fan of them ever since. It just happened when I joined One Mighty Roar. Supporting Strategies was already there. When we started Robin, I immediately involved Supporting Strategies. There's just a lot to be said about people who do this day in and day out, and they get me clean books, and they go through my transactions. never a complaint, and it's worth, again, every penny, because when time comes to raise money, when time comes to do good forecasting, good projections, having well done, clean financials, just, if not, makes you look professional, it actually makes you think more professional.
Amen. But you don't do, you have a third-party accountant bless your books?
Yes, of course.
And who do you use there?
Philly Driscoll. Philly Driscoll, again, I brought, again, with CPAs, it's not the firm, it's the partner.
Right. You don't need Big Four until you're, selling for your $150 million.
No, you don't need them, and you don't want to pay the price because they have to do, I believe, Starbucks insurance.
But you need these right away, and there are other things you're going to be needing. For example, 409A valuations.
Right. SVB does very well. I love Olivia. She's going to be doing our 409A again.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't use SVB for our 409A. I love SVB, but we use somebody else. I got the name from our attorneys.
Yeah, they're quick.
Our attorneys, by the way, I love Dave Capillo from Goodwin Proctor.
There you go.
But we've used multiple things, incorporating us in the beginning. Ken Merritt of Merritt and Moulton was a Burlington guy who helped me. Wasn't the big city rates, and then we used different people for a different type of.
And that's the thing with attorneys and with CPAs, and there are service providers who have been in the game for a while, and you may find these little gems, these, especially in Vermont or, Portland, Maine, where they've been in big firms, they've done the game, they wanted to ratchet down the crazy pace. And you can get same great minds to work on your stuff at probably lower rate.
Absolutely. Now there are cases when you want that, it's not the brand name, it is someone who is in the flow. So I'll give the example with Dave Capillo. When I am putting together my funding round, he would not only know who is active in the area, he would know who founders had troubles with, on board matters. He would know what are the current valuations going on there. It's amazing amount the service professionals, if they're connected in there. You don't need that when you're doing certain legal documents and contracts, but you need that at certain times. So that's where you have those relationships going on.
Look, it's like in anything in operations. That's why sometimes I piss off MBAs when I tell them that the fact that they got MBA does not qualify them to even sometimes intern in operations. In operations, it's a game of caveats, and everything has a caveat and a workaround, and it's just something that you learn on your own skin and you pass on to people you try to bring into your craft. Operations, dealing with all these things, there's so many variables that the only way to learn really is to do it.
Now let's talk recruiting. Are you the person who is sort of checking references in your firm, or is that a group effort? How do you go about recruiting?
Mix. So I have a little bit more unorthodox approach. In my previous life, I was a talent agent.
In addition to being a movie star.
No, it wasn't. Oh God, Ty, is this Scotch o'clock? No, it's not. Okay, thanks God. You wake up and with shivers at night thinking about being on Scotch o'clock.
We will. Actually, I was on Scotch o'clock, and I will.
No,
put that in the show notes.
That's what I'm getting. Yeah, I've seen.
All right, well, we have to do one thing here. There is a substantial possibility. Oh, whatever it is. I see Bacardi. All right.
I haven't been to it. We get a lot of gifts of liquor, which we don't consume quick.
We're talking. Let's switch it. We were talking about recruiting.
Right. So as a talent agent who switched to technology industry, I saw a lot of parallels between managing creative individuals and especially technical talent. Developers, for example, are not much different from rock stars. If put aside the antics, think about how they mind it works and how they create. It's even with accountants. Everyone is there's something special about them when they were born. They're doing their craft, what they love doing. And I take that context into recruiting. I absolutely love recruiting. I have an attitude that I pride myself, and we pride ourselves, having spent a single penny on recruiters, third-party recruiters. Again, that's a core competency. You need to know how to recruit. Somebody in your team needs to know how to recruit. If you can't, don't stay at a damn company. Don't outsource. When you're going to be huge, when you have 200 employees, you can start pulling in third parties. Don't be lazy. Learn how to recruit.
I'm going to give a different view. We were funded in my last company by Google Ventures. And Google Ventures, as part of their suite of things they do to support people, have full-time recruiters on staff.
Well, that's a little bit of a different case.
Yeah. So it's still up to you to make the decisions, to be talking to people, all that kind of stuff. But they can help create the funnel. They can help you write that job description to make sure that you've got the right things. They can give you a sense of what are the prices going on in different areas. But there are certain guides. Yeah, there are certain guides for how much stock do you give to a engineer at the level of, director or VP engineering, whatever it may be, after you've raised 2 million versus after 10 million. I think AngelList has got some information. There's a company called Wealthfront, which has got other information.
Noah Wasserman, with his comm study, has that information. I mean, it's not, I remember.
This is Noah Wasserman of Harvard.
Yeah.
And we'll do another link.
In 2007, I remember, when I left Chicago, there's still, there was still a lot of this information was a black box. Now this is, if you make the effort, market information and so on is available. But at the end of the day, the deal that you make is on, if the candidate thinks that they're worth that and you think they're worth that, it's a deal made. That's where the market is. Everything else is kind of general guidelines. Hi, tell me about the advisors.
Hello, I'm Apollo Sinkevicius. I am 6'11" and
5'11".
5'11".
6'5".
I wish I would be happy to be 5'11". Anyway,
no, you don't want to do things.
We switched sides here because I asked Apollo a question and he punted it. The question is advisors, and so please pitch in with your different opinions. I think that one of the problems, the basic problems at the heart of a startup is credibility.
Sure.
And sometimes knowledge. It depends on how early the people are in. But especially if you're going into a new area where people haven't been before, no one knows a lot and people are taking ideas. And I think the greatest sign of a good leader is humility on the one side to know they don't know all the answers, but then also they have to have enough confidence that they can get a bunch of opinions and they'll have whiplash one way or another. They'll have to make the call themselves. But you want to have strong people. You want to hire the smartest and best people you can, and you want to have the same thing with your advisors. And I believe that before you even get a board of directors, which you don't need until you've got big funding and stuff like that, you need an advisory board which can be there, and that's best done by peers. So here I'm, talking with Apollo, and we have different opinions, but I cherish all the ones Apollo has. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them. In my case, an advisory board is useful 1,000 ways. My last company, my CTO was sourced by a member of my advisory board who happened to be an angel investor in me. And I think advisory boards are even best when they put real money in. But the point of that advisory board is to say, listen, I'm not putting you under a legal obligation, but what I expect of you, first I am going to pay you. I'm going to compensate you by 0.1% of stock or something like that to show you, I appreciate it. It's not the world, but it means something. And I just want to be able to talk to you 4 times a year. Take my call, give me a half hour. I'm going to send you notices, and we'll keep in touch. But tell me where you can help me, and that could be that you can help me recruiting, an example we had. It could be that you're helping, as example. It could be that you're just eye candy, and that just by association with your name, I get credibility. And that meaning is if you can land a great advisor, that also increases the chance that you can land a great employee, which increases the chance you can land a great customer, which increases the chance you can add a great investor. So it's all about surrounding yourself in the team. And I think the first person on your team is your attorney, who's going to help, if you get that solid underpinning. But then the second person, I think, even before the co-founders, is when you're talking about is talking with outsiders. Is this real? Is there a sanity check here?
Well, I think I would challenge you to. Oh no. I would challenge you to make a distinction between an advisor and a mentor. I think that
they're close to the same thing. In my case, an advisor is more special. You can have hundreds of mentors.
Right.
You don't have many advisors. They're special. You pay them.
Well, if somebody's really moving you forward, I mean, it's the right thing to do to reward them for it.
This is not, by the way, an hourly CEO.
And I think most of the, at least advisors I've dealt with, they want to help you anyway.
Amen.
And I mean, I can actually think of every single advisor that I cherish and respect greatly. They got compensated. They were surprised actually that they were extended paperwork.
And some don't want it, but the idea is I want to show back I want to pay it forward. And again, I think 0.1% is a perfectly valid.
It really, whatever you're comfortable with. But I think it's before any attorneys, before anything, and something that I know that I've learned. Probably vast majority of things that I do everywhere from my mentors, late Jan Shunk and Jack Wright in Chicago. They were the ones who tore me another one every single time I went the wrong route. They're the ones who kept me honest, and especially when you're in your 20s and you feel invincible, and that confidence is great, but sometimes that confidence leads you into some wrong ways. Mentors were, and still to this day, and my late father used to say, you're never too old to have a mentor. Mentors are incredibly valuable, and they're the first you should find. These are the people who will be extremely candid with you and will not let you stray.
And you don't hide things from mentors. There are cases where you may not want to be completely forthcoming with a customer, even possibly with a non-board member, but board members and advisors, sacrosanct, no secrets.
It's good to have a separation because it gives you a little bit of sanity. You should be able to have a mentor who you can have a very candid conversation, everything that's on your mind, and know that it's not going outside of those doors.
We've neglected one thing, which are significant others or spouses.
Oh yes,
and
those are your investors. I look at it as those are your investors. I think my wife has been the biggest enabler. I've done some really dumb things in my career. I've made some really poor bets, and she stood by me the entire time. And there were times where I made some crazy wild bets, and she said, whatever the outcome, we'll be fine. But we said, I've written an article about that, how to, be an entrepreneur and not get divorced. There's a very high rate of divorces between entrepreneurs, and that's a very separate subject.
And is that available on the web? If so, yes. we'll link to that. Yeah. And I could also recommend Brad Feld wrote a book with his wife, Amy. I think Amy's opinion is especially important to understand what it's like to be married to the entrepreneur.
It's great. I'm told every day it's nutty, especially if you are married and you have kids. It's something that brings motivation that you've never seen in your life, but it also brings complications.
I also think that there's an issue, by the way, you said before you had a conversation when if the co-founders got divorced, whatever. I think the talking of the alignment of interest is important, and that includes the spouses of the co-founders. Yeah. There was one situation I had where the co-founder wife was starting up her own business for the first time. It was a capital-intensive business. They had the double stress of two people starting, neither one bringing in, their usual salaries. Just something to be aware of.
It needs to be managed. I think expectation management in the relationship between the co-founders and the extended family around it is very important, because every single blow up that I have seen when I look back is basically was the case of bad expectation management that's spiraled out.
I'm not going to give anybody marital advice on what they should be communicating to their wife, but I want to talk, for example, about
or husband,
right, or transparency here. You say the co-founders tell everybody everything, but
to each other.
To each other. But imagine you're a 50 person firm. I would suggest that transparency stops at what people get for salary, what their shareholdings are. Are you one of the people of radical transparency? I can see having board meetings being open until executive sessions, but an executive session, which is when other people get kicked out, I think is still important. Yeah.
It's democracy is not anarchy. Transparency. There's transparency on decisions, on a big picture. But yeah, I don't believe in going and opening up, what each person makes or what each person's shares are, because frankly we have a bias of always overvaluing ourselves, and women actually undervaluing themselves. There's a personal biases that you have, and it never worked. We've tried before in my previous ventures. It ended bad. We just ended up changing. However, it's something that discipline I know we practice is that we don't do this desperate pay. If we need somebody really bad, that doesn't mean that they should be paid more than someone else in the company who is of equivalent production value.